Hey guys, today we're in the book of Exodus, chapter 14. So, yesterday we left off with the Hebrews leaving Egypt, and God is guiding them by a column or a pillar of cloud to give shade and a fire to give light and protection. And so, today we pick up. It says, The Lord said to Moses, Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Piratha between Migdol and the sea, and you shall encamp facing it by the sea. Now, this is not what we would call a smart military strategy. God has told them to camp into the sea in kind of the middle where they're facing the sea, their back is to nothing, and they're encamped in kind of in between two mountainous places. And so basically, God has made a trap. And so Israel's camped there. There's nowhere for them to retreat. And because God knows something that they do not. Verse 3, it says that Pharaoh heard where the people were doing, and he says they are wandering in the land. That word wandering means they are confused. They're lost in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. And I, God, will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. God tells Moses, I'm going to trap you in. I'm going to make Pharaoh think that you are lost, and I am going to put in his heart to come after you and the Hebrews. Now you have to imagine what in the world was going through Moses' mind. Like, God, that doesn't sound like a good plan. I don't like that plan at all. Like, we just kind of just want an easy life, right? We've just been slaves, let us go. But that's not God's plan. And when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the Hebrew there is the word baraka, and it means to keep going, that they left and they continue to leave. They kept going. Pharaoh thought that they would leave just a little bit and stop or maybe come back, but they continued to go further and further and further away from Egypt. The mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed. Pharaoh started to have regrets. And Pharaoh asked this very strange question: what have we done? Right? Remember, Pharaoh is the son of God, Sarah. He's the son of God, but now he's not going to take the blame on this. So he says he includes his court. He includes all of his counselors and his wise folks. What have we done wrong? You guys have made the wrong decision. Now Pharaoh must clean it up. And so he took his chariot, and he took 600 chosen chariots. These are his elite, best of the best military soldiers. These are his Navy SEALs, right? He takes 600 of the chosen and all the other chariots of Egypt. So all of the military comes after Israel. Um, uh, uh, the people of Israel were going out defiantly. It means with rebellion. And the Egyptians pursued all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots. So it was just 600 and some other chariots, but now all of Pharaoh's army. Pharaoh and every soldier he has is going after Israel. And when the Egyptians were marching after them and they feared greatly, the people of Israel cried out against the Lord. The Hebrews expected a carefree walkabout, right? They expected, God has done this, there's not going to be any problems. God never promises us a carefree journey. He promises us to be with us in the valleys and the mountains. He promises to be our shield in the middle of war. So he doesn't promise us a carefree journey, but he does promise to be with us. And so what happens, just like they did in chapter 3, verse 6, they cried out, and of course, God heard them. But notice what it says. They said to Moses, these are all the Hebrews, he says, they say, is it because there were no graves in Egypt? This is kind of making fun. They're mocking Moses. If anything that Egypt did well, it was graves. It was tombs. That's what Egypt is known for. I literally just flew 6,000 miles to Egypt to see tombs and graves. They are the world's best of all time in making tombs. And so they're looking at Moses and saying, were there not enough graves in Egypt? Oh, you thought we should come out here in the desert where there were no graves so that they could make graves for us, right? They're mocking Moses and mocking God. Is that not what he wants from us? Notice verse 12, it said, you remember what we said in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve Pharaoh, that we may serve the Egyptians. Has not even been a week yet, and they've already messed up their history, right? They've already forgotten about how bad it was in Egypt, how bad Pharaoh was. They're saying, why did you bring us out here to die? Don't you remember last week when we were slaves, we were telling you, don't take us out. Pharaoh's a good guy. They were not, but we can see they've already messed up their past. They don't even remember what it was like. And Moses said to them, fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. Now, if you remember, as we're reading Joshua, why does he say, fear not, stand firm? Because they're not, right? They're fearful. Moses is fearful as well, right? But Moses says, fear not, stand firm. For one, they have no idea what Moses knows. We have no idea what Moses knows. We have no idea what God has revealed. But what's interesting, if you go back to verse 4, notice what God says to Pharaoh. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. God has already told Moses what's going to happen. And so now Moses is telling Israel, he's telling the Hebrews to fear not. God is with us. He's still in control. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent. Karash is the Hebrew word. We would translate that today in English as shut up. All you have to do is shut up. God will do what God's going to do. Just let him work. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Why do you cry? We saw this with Joshua. There's a time to pray and there's a time to act. God is telling Moses, now's the time to act. Quit praying. Let's go. Time to act. Lift up your staff, go out, divide the water. Think about this, dividing the water. This is a reversal of creation, right? There was water and he divided it with land, but now he's dividing the water. This is a reversal of creation, just as all the plagues were. So he's dividing the water, and he says, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they shall go in after them, and I will get the glory. He not only is he going to harden the hearts of Pharaoh, which he's already done, but now he's going to harden the hearts of the Egyptians, the soldiers that are coming after them, so that they will go into the sea that is being parted. And he says, no matter what, I will get the glory. God will get the glory for the parting of the Red Sea and the destruction of Egypt. And here we are today, 3,400 years later, and God is still getting the glory for it, right? And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. The Egyptians will see the glory of the God. Verse 19, the angel of the Lord who was going before them in a pillar of cloud came behind them. Came behind Egypt. Remember, they were leading out front. Now, as they're going to go across the sea, God is going to move around to the back of them to stand between them and Egypt. Notice this. There was a cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night. God was light for Israel and was darkness for Egypt. Okay? So one God can do two things. Good things for his people, bad things for those opposed to him. And Moses stretched his hand out over the sea, and a strong east wind, the same wind that brought the locusts, the eighth plague, comes in and divides the sea, and the water and the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. This should remind you of Joshua, what we said. Remember, they crossed the river. One side went down, but the other one was a wall to them, right? I would encourage you to read Psalm 77, verses 16 through 20. It talks about this, but we can say it was a wall to them. We don't know exactly where they crossed, how deep it was, but the water was much larger than it was to them. And the Egyptians pursued them. They went in, and as they were going in, The Egyptian forces were caused into a panic. Verse 24, God threw them into a confusion, and the chariot wheels began to fill with mud. Let us flee from Israel, for their Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. After all the plagues, everything that they see, Egypt can finally see what God has been doing. God is a God who fights for his people. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, and the water may come back upon the Egyptians. Notice that your hand, we've seen that several times. That's Exodus language, Pharaoh language. Put your hand and it's going to close in over them, so that Moses stretched out her hand and returned the sea. Their sea turned to its normal course. And when the morning appeared, notice then, and as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. Even as the waters came back and come back together, Egyptians were still going into the sea. That's how much power God had over them. The waters had collapsed and Egypt was still being driven into the sea by the Lord. The waters turned and covered the chariots, did everything, and not one of them remained. God won and Egypt lost. And the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. The Israelites or Hebrews had confirmation that the Egyptians were dead. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, so that the people feared the Lord and they believed. Notice the word verse 30, hand, the hand of the Egyptians. And in verse 31, Israel saw the great power. That's the same word in Hebrew. It's the word yod, the hand or the power. And so in Hebrew, it says that the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the great hand that the Lord used against the Egyptians. The hand, the power of Egypt, which they were scared, now they see the hand or the power of God. And now it says that they feared the Lord and they believed. They had fear in the hand of Egypt, and now they have fear in the hand of God. We'll talk more about that as we read, and we'll talk more about that on April the 7th when we talk about our Egypt trip. You'd ask yourself, where is Jesus in this? And the simple answer is that the God did not depart from them, right? He was with them. They don't know the plan. Only God knew the plan, but he says that he would not leave them. And he said, fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. We don't always know the plan, but we do know that God is always with us. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us, as we've seen in Joshua and as we hear the voice of Jesus in the Gospels. Hope that makes sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 15. God bless.